Kale gripped the flight yoke tighter, knuckles white under tension as the stolen freighter tore through a stretch of drifting asteroid debris. The ship groaned with every evasive maneuver, its hull protesting the strain. Inside, alarms still flashed angrily across the dash. He had disabled the trackers back near Var's outpost, but he wasn't naive enough to believe he'd shaken pursuit entirely. He just needed a head start, a few hours of clean space. The events on Yavari Prime still burned behind his eyes. That ridiculous binding ceremony in the wilds, the chanting, the relic, the clawed priestesses, and her. Saralyn, tall, proud, and far too calm. While the ritual flames painted their silhouettes into something ancient and binding, her fur, a blazing orange cascade across lean muscle and curves, had glowed in the firelight. So had her eyes glinting gold with something too knowing. He hadn't waited for the final phase. Once the runes started shifting color and the old chants got serious, he'd run, stole a shuttle, bypassed their planetary net, and jumped systems without a goodbye. He wasn't going to be tethered to anyone, especially not a foxhard alien with claws and tribal prophecies about fate. Kale exhaled slowly, punching the internal temp controls lower. The override still wasn't responding. Fried panel, probably. He'd deal with it later. All he needed now was to get into fringe space. No one chased that far. There was no law, no tracking beacons, no expectations, just freedom. He allowed himself a brief grin, and then came the sound. A faint thud. Not mechanical, not turbulence. Something dropped from the cargo bay. Kale froze, eyes narrowing. He reached beneath the control panel, fingers finding the familiar grip of his old blaster. Safety off, heart hammering, he crept toward the rear of the ship. He hadn't picked up passengers unless someone had stowed away. Unless someone had waited. The door creaked open. The cargo lights flickered, and there she was, sitting on a supply crate like she owned it. Tail curled around one leg, ears twitching in the recycled air. Her orange fur shimmered like cinders beneath the dim lights. Her braids were half undone, feathers woven into some of them. Her claws tapped the crate lazily, her golden gaze never blinking. "Hello again," Saralyn said, a sly grin curling her lips. "Miss me?" Kale's grip on the blaster tightened, the familiar weight grounding him, but only slightly. "How the hell did you get on board?" he asked, each word forced through gritted teeth. Saralyn yawned, unbothered. "Maintenance hatch. You were in such a rush, you forgot to close it. Kinda sloppy for a runaway. You can't be here, but I am." She stood, her tall frame moving with a predator's grace. Her tail flicked, her ears angled slightly forward in challenge. "And you left before the bond finalized, Kale. That's a problem for both of us." He stepped back as she approached, leveling the blaster but not firing. "I didn't agree to that ritual. I didn't agree to any of this." Her gold eyes gleamed. "You..." Touch the ember's stone. "That's enough. The bond chose you. It doesn't care what your mouth says." Kale felt a cold prickle run down his spine. She was too calm, too confident, like she'd been expecting this confrontation. Maybe even looking. "Forward to it, get off my ship," he snapped. Saralyn stopped mid-step, tilting her head. Then slowly she reached into the pouch slung at her hip and pulled out a small crystalline device, roughly triangular, pulsing faint blue. Kale's stomach dropped. "That's my nav core." She twirled it between her claws. "I swapped it while you were busy bragging to yourself about freedom. Without it, you're not going anywhere beyond sublight drift." His blaster dipped. "Give it back. Complete the bond, and maybe I will." "You're blackmailing me." "I'm surviving," she said, suddenly serious. "You might want to try it too. You've got half the guilds hunting you, the Verati Council labeling you a rogue, and now the ember scent on your blood. You think anyone's going to help you? You think you can do this alone?" Kale's lips pulled back in frustration. "I've made it this far." "Barely," she shot back. "I saved your ship when you overloaded the shielding. I rerouted your comm signals before the patrols caught them. You're flying, Kale, because I made sure of it. He stared at her, conflicted. The blaster in his hand felt heavier now. Useless. Cyrillan lowered the nav core. Let me stay, let's talk. You don't have to like me, but you need me. Kale holstered the weapon slowly. There are rules. She smiled again, sharp and amused. Of course. I'll follow the ones I agree with. She turned and walked toward the sleeping quarters, her tail swaying behind her like a banner in retreat. Kale exhaled a long, angry breath. She had him, and he knew it. And worst of all, part of him didn't hate it. Kale didn't sleep that night. He tried twice, but every time his head hit the makeshift pillow, something shifted. A quiet creak, a soft, metallic clang, the faint brush of movement in the air vents. The ship wasn't big, but it had always felt like his. Cold, controlled. Now it breathed differently, like someone else had taken a piece of its rhythm. He rolled onto his side, cursing under his breath, then sat up fully and threw the blanket aside. The edge of the bunk groaned under his weight, metal biting into his lower back. He shoved his boots on and made for the galley, half expecting her to be standing in the shadows like some smug spirit of chaos. She was. Cyrillan was perched on the counter, one leg bent, the other hanging lazily off the edge. She chewed on something, wrapped in a leaf bundle, her tail lazily flicking against the cabinet beneath her. Her orange fur shimmered faintly in the soft lighting. Decorative cords and beads now hung from a few pipes near the ceiling. Her doing, no doubt. You ever sleep? Kale asked flatly. She looked over, licking her fingers. You left your spice drawer wide open. I got inspired. What is that smell? Ferricide root and sun-dried hackle? You're welcome. Your air filters were crying for help. He stared at the draped shawl above the ventilation unit, then at the bone charm hanging over the food dispenser. This isn't a den. This is a stolen freighter. We don't decorate stolen freighters. You don't. I do. He narrowed his eyes, stepping closer. Let's be clear, this ship is mine. I stole it, I fly it. You're here because you snuck on board, blackmailed me, and jacked my nav core. You don't get to claim territory. Cyrillan raised a brow and slid off the counter, bare feet silent on the deck. And yet, I'm the one who patched your coolant relay before it fried us. She paused. I'm not here to fight, Kale, but I'm not here to obey either. He crossed his arms. Then why are you here? She paused. The confidence faltered, just slightly, just enough to show a glimpse beneath. Because if we leave this bond unfinished, they'll find you. My people, your enemies, all of them. That blood thread marks you. You might not see it, but they will. I'm here because whether you like it or not, you're already part of something bigger than your pride. He said nothing. She watched him carefully, the amusement draining from her face. I'm not asking for your love. I'm asking for your attention. You want me gone? Say it, I'll leave. But don't pretend you're not already wondering what it would mean if you didn't. Kale's throat tightened. Then reluctantly he turned away and muttered, No more bone charms in the bathroom. She smiled behind him. Deal. The ship was quieter the next day, not because Cyrillan was gone, far from it, but because Kale had stopped resisting her presence out loud. He still glared at her when she rerouted cooling pipes for better airflow or set up incense that made his nose twitch. But he didn't bark commands anymore, not every hour at least. They kept to their own spaces for the most part. He lived in the cockpit, hands always on the controls, mapping irregular drifts through empty sectors where comm relays were dead and guild eyes couldn't follow. She made herself at home in the galley and cargo area, occasionally tapping into subsystems he hadn't touched since stealing the ship. Somehow everything ran smoother since she'd arrived. That annoyed him, not because she was helpful, but because he didn't want her to be. He found her one afternoon sitting in the access crawl space, streaked with grease and a wrench in her mouth as she reset the fuel flow regulators. He froze, mid-step when he saw her upside down, tail flicking like a metronome out of the panel. You rewiring my ship? He asked, voice sharp. She spit the tool out into her palm. I'm fixing your ship. You've been flying on luck and rust. I like rust. Your rear stabilizer doesn't. She rolled out and stood, stretching, Her top was stained, with coolant clinging to her fur in spots that made Kale blink a little too long. He looked away. She noticed. Still not used to me? I'm not used to anyone. She wiped her hands with a cloth. That's a shame. I'm surprisingly tolerable. Kale leaned against the bulkhead. So this bond thing, you said we're half-tied? She nodded. The Emberstone only initiates the link. Finalizing. It is deeper. Ritual, mental sync, mutual acceptance. And if we don't finalize it, we stay connected, half-fused, unstable. Anyone who can sense the bond will know. My people see me as incomplete. Yours see you as claimed. His jaw clenched. I don't want to be claimed. Cyrillan tilted her head, expression unreadable, then claimed something back. He frowned. She tossed the cloth aside. Start by claiming your ship properly, strip the registry, recode the whole signature. Right now, it still pings as guild property. That's a beacon. Kale stared at her. For the first time since she'd shown up, she wasn't teasing, just practical, focused. It made her harder to dismiss. He turned slowly, heading back toward the console. Fine, but you keep your claws out of my armory. No promises, she called. After him. He didn't smile, but his silence wasn't as sharp. They drifted in the quiet sector for nearly 2 days, circling a dead star like it might give them shelter. Kale set the ship into passive rotation to cool the drives, then shut off all unnecessary systems, turning the vessel into a floating rock with barely a heartbeat. They needed low signals, less attention, fewer variables. Cyrillan seemed to thrive in the silence. She didn't fill it with words, didn't force conversation. She just existed, calmly tending to small repairs, organizing compartments Kale hadn't touched since boarding, occasionally sitting near the observation window with a strand of her braids between her claws, thinking, or maybe just listening. Kale spent most of his time pretending to work, but his mind kept drifting. He'd always thought the bond was just superstition, cultural myth dressed in ancient technology. But ever since the Emberstone had flared to life beneath his palm on Yavari Prime, he'd felt off, like someone had adjusted the tuning of his senses. At first, he thought it was paranoia, guilt maybe. But now, every time Cyrillan walked into a room, something in him shifted like a wire being plucked. Faint tension like hearing a sound you couldn't place but still recognized. And worse, it wasn't unpleasant. He caught himself watching her, the way her tail swayed when she was thinking, how her ears twitched at subtle noises he didn't hear, the way her fur caught the faint light like fire. And that confidence. Feral. And sure, but never cruel. She walked like someone who always knew how to survive. He respected that. Maybe even envied it. It was late in the third drift cycle when she finally said something that pulled him out of his head. You're humming. Kale blinked. What? She didn't look up from where she was fixing a loose panel. You do it when you're not paying attention. A little rhythm, just a few notes. Same every time. He didn't respond right away. Then, it's a song. I learned as a kid, from my mother before she... He stopped himself. Cyrillan nodded quietly. It's comforting. You should keep doing it. He shifted uncomfortably. Didn't know I was. She stood, wiping her hands. It's part of the bond. Echoes. Travel both ways, thoughts, emotions, memories sometimes, especially if they're loud. He looked at her. So what do you hear? She stepped closer. Right now? Regret and confusion. But under that... She paused, eyes narrowing slightly. Curiosity. About me. Kale didn't deny it, but he also didn't confirm it. I'm still figuring this out, he said instead. So am I, she said softly. Then she walked away again. No pressure, no threat, no smile, just a presence. And Kale found himself wishing just for a second that she'd stayed. The peace didn't last. It never did. Kale was reviewing the long-range sensor logs. Routine, he told himself, when the alert pinged. Not a full proximity. Breach. Not yet, but a faint distortion on the outer edge of the passive field, something slipping through the dark on low-power thrusters. He stiffened. Problem? Came Sarah-Lynn's voice behind him. Always there when things tipped. Cale nodded once. Ship. Small. Trying to be clever. She moved to his side, her tail curling around her legs as she stared at the readout. Too steady for debris, no transponder, they're masking. Think it's a drifter? No, she said flatly. Drifters don't fly like this. This is calculated. Cale tapped into the manual control scheme, flicking on shield charge without pinging the emitter signature. They're tracking us. Or me, she said, quietly. Or both. He looked at her, but she was already moving toward the weapons panel. No panic, just focus. The air in the cockpit shifted again, tighter, charged. That strange part of the bond between them humming like it sensed danger before. Logic caught up. They didn't speak much after that. Sarah-Lynn manned the defense grid while Cale angled the ship into a spiral drift path that would bring them behind the unknown contact's approach vector. It was risky, but better than sitting still. The tension broke with a pulse, a flash of plasma, from the shadows. It missed, barely, but it lit the cockpit in a burn of violet energy. Cale cursed and yanked the controls hard to starboard, throwing them into a wide, weaving escape roll. Confirmed weapons lock, Sarah-Lynn said. 2 hostiles, light attack frames, guild. She paused. No, she growled. Worse, freelancers. Cale's jaw clenched. Mercs without rules, no oversight, just a paycheck and a target. He didn't ask how. They'd been found. He already knew the answer. The ship's stealth net was old, barely holding together. Something must have leaked during their last jump. He fired back, not to hit, but to push. Sarah-Lynn sent out a burst pulse from the rear cannon, catching one of the pursuers off balance. The other doubled back and began tailing them harder. Cale dove toward a debris field, old mining junk and hollowed satellites. We get close, their sensors will jam. Then I'll make the shot count, she said, already calibrating a secondary firing solution. They shot through the broken rings like lightning. One enemy clipped a metal shard and spiraled out, exploding in silence. The second ship tried to match their maneuver. Too slow. Sarah-Lynn fired. It didn't explode, but it drifted. Power cut. Weapons dead. Cale exhaled, shaking. Sarah-Lynn didn't. Look at him when she said, they'll keep coming. Then we keep dodging. But in the back of his mind, Cale knew the truth. Eventually, dodging wouldn't be enough. The drift afterward felt longer than it was. Cale powered down everything non-essential, again, letting the ship coast silently through a radiation belt. Even Sarah-Lynn went still for a while, perched in the co-pilot's chair, eyes half closed, arms folded, tail swaying in a slow rhythm. Neither of them spoke. Cale sat slouched in the pilot's seat, jaw clenched, staring at a static display screen. He wasn't shaking, but he could feel the tremor buried deep like a fault line waiting to crack. Next time, he muttered, we don't wait for them to fire first. Sarah-Lynn didn't open her eyes. Next time, we find out who sent them before we start shooting. You think I left a trail? I think we did. He frowned at her. You were supposed to erase the logs from Yavari. I did, but something followed, a scent, a resonance. The emberstone marks don't fade easy, not for someone chosen. He scowled. Stop saying that. I didn't ask for it. I didn't want to be chosen. Finally, her eyes opened, golden, glowing faintly, unreadable. Neither did I. That shut him up. She stood and left the cockpit without another word. Cale didn't stop her. He sat there a long time. He didn't like the silence anymore. It was starting to feel like something. Not peace, not solitude. Loneliness. He found her, an hour later in the cargo hold, sitting cross-legged on a crate. She'd strung up a few more of her trinkets, tiny woven charms made from thread and metal scrap. They spun slightly in the recycled air. He leaned in the doorway. You still decorating? Cyrillan didn't look up. Calms me. Helps me think. About? She turned toward him slowly. The way you hesitated when they fired on us. Cale's brow furrowed. I didn't. You did. Just for a second. I felt it through the bond. He stepped forward, defensive now. So what? You're tracking my heart rate now? No, she said simply. I felt fear. But it wasn't for you. It was for me. Cale froze. Cyrillan watched him quietly, ears twitching. It's not weakness, Cale. It's connection. He didn't answer. Couldn't. Finally, she added, it doesn't mean we're in love, just that we're not alone. You don't have to be afraid of that. Cale sat on the crate across from her, staring at the dangling threads between them. He wasn't ready to admit anything yet, but he didn't leave the room. And for now, that was enough. 3 days passed in silence. That wasn't quite silence anymore. Cale and Cyrillan found rhythm. Not harmony, but rhythm. She cooked strange meals that filled the ship with the scent of fire spice and citrus bark. He recalibrated the navigation coils while grumbling about her bone charms hanging from diffuser boxes. They exchanged fewer barbs, more glances. She stopped walking into rooms like she was challenging him. He stopped tensing every time she brushed past. Something fragile, unspoken, hovered between them. Then the signal came. Cale was dozing in the pilot seat when the soft ping stirred him, an alert on the encrypted sub-channel he hadn't used in years. He blinked himself upright, one hand, already moving to silence it. Only one person used that code. He opened the message. A flickering feed stuttered to life. A woman with short-cropped hair, dark eyes, and a visible cybernetic spine. Solara Nix, former scavenger, borderline criminal, one-time engineer, and Cale's longest surviving contact from his guild days. You owe me, she said flatly. So listen up. The relic that started your bond. It has a core, very old tech, ancient, probably pre-contact. If you want to break that bond for good, you'll need to destroy it. Cale sat up straighter. Location's volatile, she continued. I'm parked on a derelict orbiting Pyro's wane. Bring heat shielding. Come fast. You're not the only one tracking the core. The feed cut out. He sat frozen, eyes locked on the static. Behind him, quiet footsteps padded closer. He didn't turn. You felt that too, didn't you? He said quietly. Cyrillan stood behind him, silent for a beat. Your tension hit like a wave. I didn't need to hear it to feel it. Cale spun the chair to face her. We might have a way out, a real way. Destroy the core and this bond dies. We both go free. Cyrillan's jaw flexed just slightly. And what if it's not just tech? What if it's deeper than that? You said yourself it's unfinished. That means it can be broken. She stepped closer, her tail low, ears angled back. Not in anger. Caution. And is that still what you want? Cale hesitated, then said the only thing that came to him. I don't know. Cyrillan didn't flinch. I'll follow your lead, she said, but make sure it's yours, not fear making the choice for you. She turned and walked away, leaving Cale alone with the weight of the signal and the chance to erase something that might be the only real thing he'd ever had. The journey to Pyro's wane took 4 silent jumps, each one through progressively darker space. The dying star around which the station orbited had collapsed decades ago, leaving a graveyard of heat-scarred moons, unstable gravity wells, and wrecked mining satellites. Pyro's wane itself was a miracle it still floated at all. Once a science facility for deep-seal tectonic research, it had been gutted and repurposed a dozen times. Cale remembered it vaguely. Guild rumors, failed black market deals, whispered ghost stories. Cyrillan stood beside him as they emerged, from jump. Her fur bristled at the electromagnetic static. This place feels wrong, she muttered. Cale adjusted the dampeners. That's because it is. They docked manually. No AI, no functioning autoseals, just a hiss of stale air and the eerie, echo of their boots on rusted metal. Inside, the station was a tomb, hollow and creaking. Lights flickered like dying fireflies, and long-forgotten experiments lay scattered across the corridors. In the far chamber, they found Solara waiting, a plasma torch in one hand, the other resting on a beat-up turret mount. Her eyes lit up. More relief than joy. Didn't think you'd actually come. Kale gave a half shrug. Didn't think you'd still be alive. Solara grinned. Then we're both full of surprises. Saarinen watched her with thinly veiled suspicion, claws subtly extended. This, Solara asked, nodding toward the Vulpine. Kale didn't answer. Figures, she said, then turned. Follow me. You're going to want to see this. They descended through a shattered lift shaft, down into the planet-facing subdeck. There, surrounded by cracked shielding and arcane circuitry, stood a sealed containment column. Within it, the relic core glowed faintly, not violently, just alive. Cyrillin's hackles rose. That's it, Solara confirmed. Heartbeat of the Emberstone. You smash that, and everything it ever connected to fades. Clean. Final. Kale stepped closer. The hum resonated in his bones. It didn't feel like magic, didn't even feel alien. It felt familiar, and it whispered something he didn't want to admit. That part of him didn't want to let go. Cyrillin's voice broke the silence. Before you do anything, ask yourself why you're hesitating. Kale stared at the relic. I'm trying to figure that out. Kale's fingers hovered near the plasma cutter strapped to his side. One good slice across the containment locks, and the core would be slag. He could almost see it. Melted crystal, dead, circuitry and silence. The bond gone, the weight off his chest, his mind finally his own. He didn't move. Saarinen stood a few steps behind him. She hadn't said anything more, but her presence was steady, warm, like heat on the back of his neck. Not oppressive, just there. Unavoidable. Real. Solara leaned against the support strut, chewing something and watching with curious detachment. You waiting for it to blink first? Kale didn't answer. His gaze locked on the relic. The core pulsed with a slow rhythm, faint gold woven with dark blue. The same colors that had flared during the bonding ritual, the same hues that had danced in Cyrillin's fur under firelight. It looked fragile now, contained, a prisoner of its own purpose. Before you destroy it, Saarinen said, voice even, I want to say something. Kale didn't look at her. Of course, you do. I didn't choose this, she began. But I didn't run from it either. I followed you. Not because I was ordered to, not because of the relic, because I wanted to know if there was truth in the choice the Emberstone made. He turned slowly. She stepped forward, eyes glowing dimly in the relic's light. I'm not asking for forever, she said. I'm asking if what we've built means something. Not to fate, not to a bond. To you. Kale's throat felt tight. His mind screamed to finish the job. Cut ties. Escape. But another part, one deeper, quieter, older, than fear, wanted something else, wanted her. I thought I'd feel free if I destroyed this, he said. And now, he turned back to the relic, saw his reflection warped in its crystalline curve. Hollow, tired, but not alone. Never alone. Not since Yavari. He holstered the cutter. I think freedom isn't what I was running toward. It's what I was running from. Solara blinked. So we're not smashing it? Kale stepped away from the core. No. Cyrilin exhaled, relief barely veiled. She didn't smile, not yet, but her tail swayed once gently behind her. Kale looked at her. I'm still scared of this, of you, of us. She nodded. So am I. He held her gaze. Good. The relic pulsed once more, not louder, just steady. Together. They turned away from it, leaving behind the weight of destiny and stepping into something far more terrifying. Choice. The trip back from Pyro's wane was quiet, but not like before. This wasn't the silence of tension or avoidance. It was the kind born of shared breath, of thoughts too big for quick words. Cale sat at the helm, one hand on the console, the other resting lightly on the armrest where Sarah-Lynn's hand had brushed, his only moments earlier before she retreated to the back lounge. She didn't need to stay by his side every second now. She chose to when it mattered. That meant more than either of them had said out loud. As the ship passed into the outer edge of the Korkari drift, Cale's sensor array lit with an encrypted ping. High-clearance, obsolete code, a signature he hadn't seen in years but couldn't mistake. Gildish. He tapped it open without hesitation. The display fuzzed, then cleared to reveal an older man with a scar down his jaw, gray streaking his temples. Commander Rentaus, one of the few guild officers who'd ever treated Cale like more than a tool with a pulse. Taus didn't waste time. Cale, you're being hunted. Not guild bounty hunters, not freelancers. Valkyrian elite guard. 4 ships just burned through a council blockade like it was paper. They're not hiding it. They're broadcasting your bond signature across relay stations. Sarah-Lynn entered the cockpit mid-message, her golden eyes narrowing. Taus continued. I don't know what happened, but this isn't diplomacy anymore. This is punishment. They want you either chained to their throne or broken beyond use, and your bondmate. He hesitated. She's considered a traitor. The feed ended. No pleasantries, no advice, just a warning. Cale stared at the blank screen. They're coming. Sarah-Lynn's voice was cold. They're not just coming. They're declaring war. He looked at her. Was this the plan all along? Force me into compliance, by turning the entire sector into a trap? She shook her head. No. If the elite guard's involved, this isn't about the bond anymore. It's about control. You disobeyed. I defected. That makes us dangerous. Cale stood slowly. The hesitation was gone now, replaced with something harder, sharper. Then maybe we stop running. Sarah-Lynn's ears perked slightly. You want to fight back? He looked her dead in the eye. No. I want to make them wish they never started chasing us in the first place. The next 2 hours were a blur of motion. Cale rerouted the ship's energy grid to reinforce their weakest systems. Shields, countermeasures, comm encryption. Sarah-Lynn tore through the cargo hold for anything usable. Old mines, detonation packs, stealth foam she could rig into a makeshift sensor mask. Neither of them spoke much. Words weren't necessary anymore. This wasn't about escape. This was about making a statement. As Cale worked, he kept seeing flashes. Sarah-Lynn standing in firelight on Yavori Prime, her fur gleaming like flame and her eyes burning with something wild, something honest. He'd thought that was the moment the bond had started. He was wrong. It started the moment she didn't leave, the moment she let him rant, threaten, run, and followed anyway. And now she was the only one still standing at his side. When they met again in the galley, Sarah-Lynn's fur was dusted in soot, a few singe marks along her ribs. She dropped a makeshift detonator on the table between them. I set traps along the ridge of the moon side, she said. If they land a shuttle or try to come in low, they'll walk right into it. Cale nodded. I've programmed a false signal in our wake trail. It'll buy us 30 minutes before they realize we're not heading toward the drift outpost. She looked him over. You're calm. He gave a dry laugh. I'm too tired to be scared. Her tail curled around one leg. We could still run. One more jump, one more shadow sector. Let it all fall behind us. He leaned against the counter and looked at her. No, I don't want to be looking over my shoulder every cycle, waiting for a signal ping to tell me my life's about to end. He stepped forward. I'm done living like I'm borrowed. Sarah-Lynn didn't say anything right away. Then her ears twitched, and she gave him a look both fierce and proud. Good, she whispered. They moved together after that, shoulder to shoulder, sinking silently. He plotted the ambush vector. She calibrated the weapons. By the time the elite guard arrived, their ship, an old refitted warframe Cale had affectionately renamed Resolve, hovered in the shadow of a fractured moon, quiet as a ghost. 4 incoming vessels. Full Valkyrian war banners. No warning shots. No calls, just intent. Kale stared at the display. "You ready?" he asked. Sarilyn stepped into the co-pilot's chair, claws flexing once, eyes shining like wildfire. "Let's show them what happens when you corner a fox and a ghost." The elite guard arrived in perfect formation, sleek obsidian hulls reflecting fractured moonlight, their engines humming with ominous unity. 4 ships, sharp and merciless, shaped like spears thrown through space. Each bore the crimson crest of the Valkyrian sovereign house, not diplomats, not bounty collectors. Executioners. Kale and Sarilyn sat shoulder to shoulder in the cockpit, their ship resolve masked in the shadow of a rocky ridge. Kale toggled the last of the jamming beacons. "Online. They're scanning, sweeping for heat traces," he said. "Let them," Sarilyn said, voice low, tail flicking behind her. "They'll find just enough to think we're drifting." Kale spared her a glance. Her eyes were locked on the tactical display, calm, blazing with focus. He wanted to say something like, "You were right," or "I'm glad you're here." But it all felt too thin, too small for the moment. Instead, he said, "Signal the mines." Sarilyn pressed the switch. From the moonside ridge, 3 crude charges detonated in a controlled arc. They didn't strike the ships directly, but they didn't have to. The burst knocked the lead Valkyrian scout into a rapid spin, destabilizing its thrusters. A second ship banked into the debris cloud, losing sensor clarity. The remaining 2 adjusted course right into Resolve's trapped corridor. "Now," Kale growled. He launched a burst of ion disruptors from beneath the ship's belly. A blind spot. They'd calculated down to the meter. 1 Valkyrian vessel jolted, shields sparking as its control grid flickered. The other returned fire, a jagged lance of plasma that sliced across Resolve's port side, sending sparks from the instrument panel. Sarilyn didn't flinch. She manned the turrets, firing in rhythm, short bursts, not wasting a single shot. Kale pulled the ship into a sharp arc, scraping the moon's ridge close enough that rock dust scattered against the shields. "You shoot, I'll fly. Try not to scrape the paint off," she muttered. "I like it rugged." Another blast rattled the hull. A pipe ruptured behind them, but they were alive, moving, fighting together. Kale laughed, a short, surprised sound. "I can't believe we're doing this." Sarilyn bared her teeth in a wild grin. "Believe it. This is our sky now." The battle turned messy, but it was theirs, and Kale realized this was what not running felt like. The cockpit lights flickered as Resolve bucked under another hit. The right stabilizer screamed in protest, metal grinding deep in the hull. Kale wrestled with the controls as warning lights painted everything red. "Hull breach in Section 4, Sarilyn called out, her claws dancing over the damage control panel. "Sealing it now." One of the Valkyrian ships, the one that had clipped the debris, limped back into the fight, its weapons array sparking but still functional. It came in low, trying to get beneath their firing arc. "Not today," Kale snarled, diving Resolve into a spiraling descent that brought them face to face with their attacker. For a heartbeat, they were close enough to see the enemy pilot through the viewport, a figure in ceremonial armor, face hidden behind a tactical mask. Then Sarilyn's turret spoke, and the Valkyrian ship vanished in a bloom of fire and twisted metal. 3 left. The remaining elite guard ships regrouped, falling into a coordinated attack pattern. They'd underestimated their prey once. They wouldn't make that mistake again. "They're boxing us in," Sarilyn observed, her voice steady despite the chaos. Classic pincer movement. Kale checked their power levels. Shields at 60%, weapons running hot, the ship groaning under the strain of combat maneuvers it was never designed for. "Then we do something unclassic," he said. He killed the engines. Resolve went into freefall, tumbling toward the moon's surface like a dead rock. The Valkyrian ships adjusted their vectors, following what they assumed was a crippled target. "Kale," Sarilyn said quietly, "please tell me you have a plan." "I have half a plan." "That's optimistic of you." At the last possible second, Kale fired. The emergency thrusters, not to arrest their fall but to spin them around. Resolve came up shooting, catching two of the pursuing ships completely off guard. Cyrillin's guns found their mark, crippling one and sending the other careening into the moon's thin atmosphere. The last Valkyrian ship, the commander's vessel, judging by the elaborate markings, pulled back, reassessing. Through the static-filled comm channel came a voice cold and imperious. "Kale of the outer reaches, you have violated sacred law. Surrender now and your bondmate will be granted a warrior's death." Kale and Cyrillin exchanged a look. "Counteroffer," Kale said into the comm. "Go home and tell your masters that some things can't be chained." The response was immediate. A full-power plasma lance that would have cut Resolve in half if Kale hadn't been expecting it. He rolled the ship hard to port, feeling the heat wash over their hull. "His turn," Cyrillin said, and fired everything they had left. The Valkyrian commander was good, better than the others. He evaded the worst of it, but not all. His ship limped away into the dark, trailing atmosphere and sparks. For a long moment, there was only silence and the soft hum of cooling weapon systems. "Think he'll be back?" Cyrillin asked. Kale watched the retreating ship disappear among the stars. "Eventually, but not today." He turned to look at her. Really look at her. Her fur was singed in places, her braids had come undone, and there was a cut above her left eye. She was beautiful and fierce and absolutely terrifying. "So," he said. "What now?" Cyrillin smiled. Not the sharp, challenging grin he'd grown used to, but something softer, more real. "Now we find out what happens when a fox and a ghost decide to stay together." She reached across the space between their chairs and took his hand. Her claws were retracted, her touch gentle but sure. "The bond isn't just about the relic," she said. "It never was. It's about choice. Your choice. My choice. What we choose to build together." Kale looked down at their joined hands, then back up at her golden eyes. For the first time since Yavari Prime, he wasn't afraid of what he saw there. "Then let's build something," he said. Outside, the stars wheeled slowly around them, and the universe felt a little less vast and cold. Resolve drifted in the quiet aftermath of battle, no longer running, no longer hiding. Just a ship and two souls who had found something worth fighting for. The bond hummed between them, not a chain but a bridge, not a prison, but a choice freely made, and in the darkness between the stars that was enough.